Ok, chiamo 2. Ok. And I start my presentation. I'm Luca Pirodi from the University of Malta, but most of the work was done in my previous institution, the University of Cagliari. With this note, we present some preliminary results related to an integrated diagnostic project in which we aim at comparing the performances of close-range techniques and tools. Okay, I have. Okay. This was done by the analysis of a wooden artifact, we see here, simulating historical sculptures in terms of techniques and common issues like these pentimenti. Within this presentation, we'll have a brief introduction on some of the most common issues related to historical wooden artifacts diagnostics. And then we'll see how the Pulcinella diagnostic project is structured and preliminary results of a first round of investigations, including photogrammetry, multispectral imaging, active infrared thermography, and Terahertz analysis. Finally, we'll briefly summarize the preliminary results of these campaigns and try to delineate the potentiality of the diagnostic project designed to be open to any contribution from diagnostic techniques and disciplines. Many of the starting techniques used in this first round of investigations have been applied in literature to wooden artifacts with simpler geometries like paintings. And these diagnostic techniques have proved a certain ability to image various kinds of defects at different depths. The Pulcinella project aims at testing and developing the various diagnostic techniques applying them to a wooden mask that takes its shape from a theater scene leader mask representing the carnival mask of Pulcinella belonging to the Neapolitan tradition. The model was created by a professional restorer starting from cypress wood, and all natural and simulated defects were documented during its creation. Here we can see a node of the wood, while in the next slide we can see a groove to be filled with sawdust to simulate a moth attack, and a cloth glued to the panel to simulate a historical restoration work. The first step of the diagnostic project has been the photogrammetric documentation of the wooden mask, and the input images were obtained from smartphone videos acquired.
Che stai facendo? No, io in una sessione, mi stavo seguendo. Aspetta, scusa.
Acquired in neutral light conditions. We see some frames extracted from these videos. And this was done for 2 levels of finishing. The photogrammetric project flow has followed the typical setups of the technique to come to 2 finished models, textured 3D models. The multispectral imaging was done by means of 2 different sensors. A drone multispectral sensor typically used for environmental monitoring, and a modified digital single lens reflex camera with a more common setup. Here we see the bands of acquisition of the 2 sensors. And with a quick view, we can see the results. Here we are with the Mica Sense red edge sensor controlled by the drone, and we have the blue channel, the green channel, the red channel, the red edge, and the near infrared. In the near infrared, we can see first pentimento, and applying a stack to a series of repeated acquisitions with the near and the red edge channel, we can see also a pentimento on the other eye. Now we see the results from the reflex camera. We are at the ultraviolet, and we see some alignments of the pentimenti. On visible, nothing, while some pigments are differently transparent to the light in the three remaining bands that are in the near infrared. And we clearly see the right eye and a little on the left, but on the other two, the signal from the left eye is most strongly. Active infrared thermography was applied to the raw mask before plaster and paintings application, and to the finished one. Here we have some setups that were used to investigate the raw mask, and a peculiarity of the mask is that it was also studied with a transillumination setup. We have the heat source on the rear and the camera, the thermal camera on the front. And the results mostly correlate the thermal indices obtained with the sculpture thickness, the thickness of the wood. While most of the acquisition were done with the heat sources and the camera on the same side of the scene. And now we can see two time series of derived thermal indices calculated across small subsequent subsets of the cooling phase recordings. And in particular, looking at the mole of the mask, we can appreciate that is differently visible at across time. We are moving on bigger time on the cooling stage, and gradually the signal disappears. The finished mask was subject to a minor number of measurement setups, and they were all with the sources and camera on the same side. And we can appreciate looking at the same kind of time series as for the raw mask. We can appreciate the minor persistence of the signal due to the mole, because we can see in the second step, but already in the third and in the fourth is practically disappeared. Finally, we can see the preliminary results of the Terers analysis that were applied to the finished mask. The top of the mask was the first target of the Terers study in correspondence of two simulated defects that were the groove and the cloth. We see the raw mask but it's the analysis is applied on the finishing mask, just for the interpretation of the data. And in particular here, we can see that the Terets radiograms are able to recognize the upper limits of the group, but not the lower, by the interruption of the signal linked to the interface between wood and plaster. And also with the other radiograms, we can see here a signal, a discontinuity that is linked to the glue on the panel cloth. We see some more radiograms, and the second area investigated is the nose of the mask. The analysis being able to distinguish the plaster, the interface between the plaster and the paintings, and between the plaster and the wood. Interfaces that are also partially recognizable in the time slices, because we can see here the contour of the section of the interface between plaster and painting, and here the contour of the section between plaster and wood. While for the deeper times, we have also the possibility to appreciate the wood veins. Coming to the summarize of the results, the preliminary results related to an integrated diagnostic project have been presented, and all natural in this project, all natural and artificial effects, the singular feature and the construction steps and techniques have been documented across the making of the mask. Specifically, two steps: the raw mask after finishing the sculpting work, and the finished mask after paintings have been documented by the 3D digital model via photogrammetry. And coming to the more specifically diagnostic techniques, multispectral imaging was able to image to show the pentimenti over the plaster in correspondence to the two eyes through 3 of 4 interested pigments, but no signal was detected from pentimenti that were drawn in deeper layers. Active infrared thermography was able to highlight some natural and artificial inhomogeneities, but not all. And the comparison between the raw and the finished mask underlined that the finishing works generally get worse the signal to noise ratio of the thermal datasets. Terets imaging reconstructed the most important construction interfaces that were the wood to plaster and the plaster to painting. But the skin depth was not enough to image all the features, like at the bottom of the groove. And Terets imaging was also the technique that was most strongly suffered from the complex and curved surfaces, allowing only small subsets to be investigated at once. So we have only the top of the head or a part of the nose in the more flat, in the most flat surfaces. And finally, we have more general conclusions. The project, the diagnostic project, aims at comparing the performances of close-range techniques and tools on a complex sample, more complex than paintings that were the typical targets in literature, simulating typical issues of precious and historical wooden artifacts. And the shown preliminary results support the usefulness of integration approach due to the limitedness and limitations and best results of the diagnostic techniques used in complex targets like historical wooden sculptures. The Pulcinella project aims also at developing new techniques and approach to wooden sculpture diagnostic, thanks to the possibility to inspect a standardized and documented target of study and the possibility to compare between different applications. And finally, the Pulcinella project is an open diagnostic project, specifically being open to various techniques, algorithms, tools, and research groups and operators. I have finished. Okay, thank you. And are there any questions from the audience? If not, we can move to the next presentation. That was the first in program, but we switched because the speaker was not in the room. I see now that Francesco Russo is in the room. Yes. I stop the share.
Yes, Luca, sorry.
Yes, no problem.
No, sorry. Just an information, because the organization movie our presentation from today at Tuesday. And then we stay in the program, but this is an old version of this session.
Okay.
The organizer asked us to present the 7th, and then Dr. Iritano will stay in presence in the conference on Tuesday morning.
Okay.
Francesco,
Sorry for this.
Francesco, I'm sorry, I am the assistant. If you want, we can switch in Italian, così possiamo risolvere la questione. La sessione di oggi, l'intervento di oggi era previsto per domani?
No, per il 7.
Il 7?
E gli organizzatori ci hanno detto il 7.
Ma
infatti,
quindi fuori dalla sessione del workshop, nella sessione generale,
sì,
forse?
Sì, dalla sessione generale, sì, proprio.
Okay.
Quindi
Gervasi ci ha detto che sarà il 7 mattina. E infatti Iritano parte stasera con l'aereo per essere proprio a Malaga e presentare personalmente. Quando io stamattina ho controllato, ho visto che c'era questa sessione e mi sono preoccupato veramente.
Va bene, allora provo. Ok, mi può indicare il nome della sessione dove presenterà il 7?
Non glielo so dire perché l'ha detto Gervasi a Iritano. Il secondo autore si chiama Giuseppe Iritano.
Ok.
Ed è lui che ha mantenuto i contatti, tant'è che, ripeto, lui parte stasera per essere domani a Malaga il 7 presentare il lavoro.
Ok, va bene.
Questo
allora
mi dispiace perché nelle slide ce l'ho anche io, avrei potuto presentarla adesso, però mi dispiace perché quello se c'è proprio il biglietto, sta venendo personalmente, quindi.
Ok, va bene. Allora, nel frattempo, magari Luca, se possiamo andare avanti con la prossima presentazione, nel frattempo io provo a contattare il professor Gervasi o gli organizzatori, cerco di capire se è stato effettivamente di switchare nel programma la presentazione di Militano e poi magari la faccio contattare dal professore.
Perfetto, benissimo.
Va bene.
Grazie infinite, grazie.
Allora, Marilena, you are the next.
Ok.
The first presentation is joint use of GPR survey, terrestrial and aerial photogrammetry for the study of the portico of the Cathedral of San Pietro in Zenia, Italy. Yes.
Okay. Nice to meet you. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Yes, I will speak about this project that regarded the restoration and the improvement of the buildings seismic vulnerability. The building is positioned on a complex archaeological stratigraphy and as shows some clear sign of decay. And it is located in Isernia, in central Italy, in Molise region, and it is in the actual Piazza Andrea di Isernia. Here, under the actual church, there are many ruins of the ancient city of the Roman town of Isernia. And the archaeological area includes complex buildings that were used and rebuilt several times over the century. And in this way, today, it represents a rich example of continuity of life that is characterized by structure from the Roman period to the early Christian period and the medieval period. Here with different colors are drawn the ruins belonging to each period. In the first period is attested a temple that is visible today here, in particular its podium. And it is about 20 meters, and the entrance was in the south of the church, and here you can see the roads that were near the temple. After this, in a second moment, a second temple was built in the 1st century BC. And it was transformed, and the entrance this time was designed in the northern part of the area. And after this, around the 5th century, a Christian church was installed on the structures of the temple, and this involved the construction of an apse and also a baptistry in the left side of the church. Again, after a big earthquake, this structure was destroyed, and a second church was rebuilt, changing again the orientation of the entrance. Also, this structure was destroyed by an earthquake, and from that moment, around the 18th century, a new look was given to the church, the actual church, with a neoclassical style. At the end, during the Second War, the church was bombed, and the portico that is the object of this study was partially destroyed, above all in the right side. And in order to obtain a complete representation of the portico, we realized that we carried out aerial photogrammetry and terrestrial photogrammetry in order to represent it in with an high resolution. And given the complexity of the building and above all the ornaments, the choice of these methods solves the need to reach high heights by using the drone in a short time and with a good degree of accuracy. In the first phase, so ground control points were positioned on the paved surface, and they were then surveyed with the total station. For the areas that were not easily accessible because of the high altitude, we used as a reference geometric elements of the Mansory. And data processing followed the standard steps using Agisoft Metashape software. And here you can see the sparse point cloud, the dense cloud, the mesh RGB, and the resulting solid mesh. And thanks to this work, we were able to obtain an orthophoto of the facade of the church, from which we prepared a drawing of the building with an high precision. Particular attention was reserved to the columns that show scenes of fractures and decaying. Here is shown a 3D model of the column that was obtained with the Claude Compare. And the survey in general provided a precise metric and photorealistic determination of the complex structures. And from the detailed analysis of columns, we noticed some irregularities in their arrangement. In fact, slight deviation of the vertical axis from the center of gravity of the columns were observed. For example, in the fourth column, there is an inclination of about 7 centimeters toward the external part of the church. And anomalies were also found in the morphology of the pavement, which, according to the digital elevation model, presents an irregular slope in a spatial interval of 67 centimeters. The lower points are measured here between the first column and the left pillar, while the highest points are located near the actual entrance of the church. These heights are distributed in such a way as to outline a semicircular prominence. After this, also ground penetrating radar, what's happening? Doesn't move. After this, ground penetrating radar survey was realized on the Parliament using a georadar, an EDS georadar with an antenna of 600 megahertz, and during that acquisition, profiles were acquired at a distance of about 30 centimeters in both direction. And the GPR survey has provided information on what is inside the surface. The more superficial slice here highlights an uniform presence of filling materials, with the exception of maximum signals amplitudes between the third and the fourth columns. This could be related to the presence of foundation elements of the structure. However, this is not observed between the left pillar and the first and second column. Then in the deeper section, we can notice a semicircular anomaly that has a diameter of about 10 meters. And this is partially coinciding with the maximum values displayed by the digital elevation model. Analyzing its shape, different construction can be supposed. For example, an apse of a church, a funeral monument, because different authors reports the presence in the ancient forum of this monument, or also a macellum or a tank in that position. But to date, for example, we can certainly affirm that if it was the foundation of an apse, it would fill a period of life of the building that goes from the 5th century to the 11th century. So integrating the knowledge that we don't have today regarding this period, but more likely the hypothesis of a funerary monument is more realistic, considering the archaeological information that we have. Of course, at this stage, there are still a few elements to support any hypothesis that it may be the structure of one of the buildings mentioned. But in a more advanced stage of the work, maybe following a systematic excavation and the study of materials, we could give rise to resonant architectural reconstruction of this anomaly. In conclusion, the work that I showed has offered new knowledge of this artifact and a complete reconstruction of the portico regarding visible and invisible structure. Evaluating the results globally, the non-verticality of the columns, considered individually, could be congenial and so could not compromise the stability of the building, in our opinion. However, the data combined with the deformation of the morphology of the floor and with the absence of the foundational elements on the left side of the church, with also the presence of archaeological structure in the right side of the portico, could affect the tolerance of the building to natural induced flexural stresses such as earthquakes. In addition, the anomaly found by the GPR survey provided an important starting point of reflection on possible structure or monuments that we don't know actually and that are still buried into the subsoil. Even if at this stage it was not possible to formulate, it was possible to formulate only hypotheses, the data acquired open up new research direction. So I finish. If you have a question, I'm here. Thank you for your audience.
Thank you, Marilena. Very interesting note.
Thank you.
I don't know if you have a question. Maybe not. Okay. Maybe we can move to the next one.
That is Marilena Cucciolini.
Yes.
Okay. So in this second case, I'm going to show the results of integrated methods for the survey and the documentation of the archaeological site of...
Marilena, we cannot see the screen.
Ah, no?
No.
I don't know why.
Avevi l'avviso.
I need to repeat the sharing, okay. Now it's okay, I think.
Yes.
Okay, so I was telling the site of Umar Asas is located in Jordan, about 30 kilometers to the town of Madaba. And from 1986 to 2007, archaeological researches were conducted by the Franciscan Archaeological Institute of Montenegro in collaboration with the Department of Antiquities of Jordan. And in 2004, it was inscribed in the UNESCO World Heritage List. After a brief stop of researchers, from 2013, the actual Institute of Heritage Science of the Italian National Research Council, in collaboration with my university, the University of Molise, started a research project. The aim was reconsidering previous researches, documenting and standing structures, and preparing the basis for conservation, restoration, and use of the site. And the remains, as you can see here, consist of a huge area. It is fortified by massive walls here in the square, and numerous buildings, and above all churches are inside these walls. This was the Roman castrum, on which new structure of the medieval period and the Christian period were rebuilt. And in the northern part, different housing and sacred structures have been also identified. Those structures can be dated from the Byzantine to the early Islamic period. And the most relevant religious complex is St. Stephen's one. That is in this position. It was developed between the 4th and the 8th century after Christ, and it was formed at least by four communicating buildings. And this work has focused on the rich mosaic decoration of the Bishop Sergius and St. Stephen churches. Here you can see details of the walls of the two church and the mosaics that here maybe you can better appreciate. And the mosaics are of exceptional quality. They are rich of inscription, portraits, but also everyday life scenes, and also geometrical and plant motifs. Through time, they have been subject to modification, both for restoration and for iconoclasm reasons. And the Italian project was aimed at surveying the outer walls of the two churches, documenting the mosaics and their state of conservation, and also performing geophysical prospection with the ground penetrating radar in order to see probably ancient structure, graves, void, still buried into the subsoil. As regards photogrammetry, the structure for motion technique was applied, and in order to obtain an high resolution in terms of chromatic definition and photographic detail. And during these years, images were acquired directly from the mosaic floor, and with a high resolution extending by 1.5 meters from the floor, with the camera perpendicular to it. And for each floor, about 2,000 frames were taken with the purpose of covering in full the surfaces of the two investigated churches. And then the photogrammetric survey was combined to the laser scanning. And laser scanning instead was carried out using a pneumatic pole to rise up the scanner up to 5 meters high, allowing in this way to measure even the highest walls crests of the church. And this tool was designed and built specifically for this purpose, because inside the church it was not possible to use drones due to the covering, the modern covering that was realized on the mosaics. And here we can see the 3D perspective view of the two churches obtained by using the laser scanning, and in the top, in the bottom, the inclination map of the walls. Here colors indicates the different surfaces, and this slide, instead, there is a detail of the apse of Bishop Sergius Church and a 3D perspective view of the model. This slide instead shows the orthophoto realized on the floor of St. Stephen Church, obtained integrating photogrammetric and laser scanning techniques. By analyzing the data set and it's diciamo an altitude variation was observed into the two churches. Here we can see that there is a lifting, for example, in Bishop Sergius Church, a lifting of the floor about 0.1 meter in the center, in the central lines, like toward the apse. And it has been noted a depression in the zone near the entrance door, the presence of which is probably related to the presence of an underground water tank, where this is because here we have traces of a water channel that is visible today. And instead, in St. Stephen Church, there are also lifting of the floor, especially in the portion that is near the other church. The causes of these deformities could be linked either to geological instability issues and to further underground man-made structure. This the execution of these surveys we think could be used as a starting point for any conservation and restoration project to be planned for the preservation of the mosaics. And at the end, also ground penetrating radar prospection were realized on the floors. And here the slices related to a depth window of about 0.5 0.7 meters are shown. And regarding the church of St. Stephen, various anomalies were found, and they are shown with the pink arrows, and also in the point in which there were lifting of the floor that is shown in the dam, we have some significant anomalies. Instead, in the church of Bishop Sergius, there is a strong anomaly at the entrance that confirm the hypothesis that there could be probably cisterns or tanks. In conclusion, all results are going to be stored in ad hoc geodatabase, resulting from the partnership and debate between all members of the project, that are archaeologists, art historians, geophysicians, and conservators. And the geodatabase is developing in time, following some steps, So beginning with the development of a geographical information system platform to archive the acquired data, to the development of analysis models for data management. Therefore, this technology we think offers both methodological and interpretative advantages. From one point of view, it allows the realization of a dialogue between the different research matters. And from the another point of view, it makes easy to interpret the information acquired from the spatial queries. In addition, the geodatabase can be used as a monitoring device on the state of conservation of the mosaics. And so it can become valid support for the planning of future restoration activities. Of course, the project is still ongoing. In next mission, we will work outside the church, and the objective is to enlarge the area of investigation in order to add new details of about the knowledge of these important sites. So this is not a conclusion, but is a preliminary presentation of the first results. And we hope to acquire new important data. So I'm finished. Thank you again for your audience.
Thank you, Marilena. Are there any questions? Okay. I see there are some text on the chat from Giuseppe for the presentation. Yes, Francesco Russo already said that you have to present in person on 7 July. If you want, we have time. I think that you can also present now if you want, but as you want.
Okay, for me, if I could present, I have a presentation. I can say by mail, send it by mail to presentation or by division of the screen.
Yes, you can share your screen with the third button.
Okay. Now?
Yes.
Marilena, please stop your screen. Okay, thank you.
Sorry.
And
Okay, we are seeing your screen.
you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, in this work I present, I have echoes. There is some return of the voice. If you can stop the microphone.
Yes, the persons without the portable microphone who are using the audio of the PC should stop the audio.
Okay. In this work, we present the activity of Calabria region in city logistic projects. Urban freight has acquired in the last decades growing importance. It's an essential service for cities and commercial activities. There is increasing number of deliveries and freight vehicles in residential areas generate heavy impacts on city sustainability and livability. If not correctly managed, this can cause an increase of CO2 emissions, especially in urban centers. Therefore, the management of deliveries is particularly complex, especially without limited traffic zone, where it's possible to regulate the traffic flows, car freight and vehicles to reduce pollution. Public authorities are primarily responsible for livable city, where people and goods move in urban areas, and they should work to plan movements while reducing paths. To tend a cleaner and sustainable city, they should be inspired by Agenda 2030. Okay. In particular, it is necessary to define a policy and a set of coordinate measures to allocate financial resources to increase the capability and to engage the actors. This is the action of the Agenda 2030, in particular to the target 11.6. Calabria is a region of southern Italy of about 2 million inhabitants. The inhabitants are concentrated principally in 8 cities, which have a population greater than 30,000 inhabitants: Reggio Calabria, Vibo, Lamezia, Catanzaro, Cosenza, Rende, Corigliano, Rossano. In these cities lives about the 30% of the whole population of Calabria. There are many towns that have a large population increase extremely in summer for tourism, as example Tropea, Pizzo, Fiumefreddo. Okay, in these places, the effect of freight traffic and on sustainability are felt more, and even if for short periods of the year, such as for tourist house. Calabria region has developed from regional transport plan in 2016 a way to promote city logistics initiatives at local level to get the zero CO2 emissions by 2030 according to Agenda 2030. In particular, in the RTP plan of Calabria region, there is an action, the action 2.5, dedicated to this measure, city logistics about. This is the all structures of the plane, and this is in particular the focus on the action 2.5, city logistics. This is the plane all objective, and 2.5 destinated to city logistics action. The technical administrative process that started from planning without regional transport plan about, and then moved on the programming execution with 2 specific goals launched by the region, up to realization by the municipalities. So Calabria region starting with planning process, the programming process, and the executing is made by the local authorities. the regional governments destinated 10 million of euros of a national fund for this measure. In particular, the region published two calls, the first one in 2018 and the second in 2019. The objective of these calls is to delimitation of area of city logistics in the center of the town and to implement activity to reduce CO2 emission for logistics distribution of freight and so on. This is, in synthesis, the rule that the region give to the local authorities to have this funding, and the criteria to select the projects. In the application, in the first call, we funding three projects, Rende, Vibo, and Reggio. And in the second call, we finance 6 projects. The total population interested is about 23% of the all Calabria population. So in this table, we synthesize the population interested in regard to the whole population of region. Actually, 9 projects have been financed, some of which are already underway. The project refers of the institution of CLA include the time windows or the time windows and the ETS mandatory, the realization of NDA or UDC, and the use of new electric vehicles. Calabria region has developed a prototypical public engagement process as a part of technical and administrative path realized for city logistics to guide as scientific support in addition to the financial one. The PA guaranteed participation and sharing of the choices, but at the same time increase knowledge and skills. In Calabria, it often happens that the decision makers have little knowledge of urban logistics and its impact, but technology is important to solve the problem of freight distribution. Calabria region supported the decision makers with the dissemination of models and methods to analyze the current scenario and design the future one. The PA was developed as training activities in discussion-based form, throughout initiative characterized by the active participation of stakeholders involved. This is the table of resuming of the activities with the time of various activities. And finally, we think that is an important activity with use public fund to involve the population and the administration of the local at the local level for this particular measure finalized to reduce CO2 impact in center of the town. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any questions from the room? I think no. So thank you all. We have finished the session, I think, and
Giuseppe, no, I'm sorry. I will remember for chair to complete a evaluation form.
Okay.
Okay.
If necessary, I can send the presentation if necessary. I don't know.
We will receive the evaluation form by mail?
Yes.
Okay. So next session will be tomorrow, I think, or of the workshop at 16:20. If someone wants to be present, it's tomorrow. We have 3 notes in program. Thank you. Thank you all. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye bye. Bye bye.
Bye.
Goodbye.
Bye.
Good afternoon. Are you hear me?
Yes.
So my name is Valentina Santarsiero, and I am the assistant and the chair of this session. So we have the first work called a deep learning approach for automatic counting of bills and products boxes in industrial production lines. The presenter is present.
Yes. Yes. It's me.
Okay. If you want, we can start.
Okay.
You can share your screen. Rafael, please turn on your microphone.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Hello, everyone. I am Rafael, and I will present to you the paper, a deep learning approach for automatic counting of bales and product boxes in industrial production lines. So, the automation of the production chain has been a major factor in the industry business. Computer vision has been used to automate production lines and replace humans. In this sense, the objective of this paper is to propose a solution that uses computer vision to automatically count packages of products with satisfactory accuracy and performance for a real-time application. To solve these problems, we use YOLO V5 as the main tool to identify and classify products in the industrial production lines. Therefore, we had to create an extended dataset with the object classes of the numerous products transported in the Semalo production lines. The developed solution enables the capture, decoding, recognition, tracking, and counting of all products in the Semalo industry. As for the solution architecture, in Semalo production line, the camera is located on the side of the conveyor belt that transports products between the production and storage areas. To perform the counting in real time and avoid data loss, we send the images over a high-speed wired network. By positioning the camera on the side of the conveyor belt and perpendicular to the products, we are able to capture more details, such as brand, color, logo, shape, and texture. These features are important because many products are very similar and often differ only in color and size. The production is divided into 5 different conveyor belts, as shown in the table. The software that does the acquisition, detection, and counting was created in Python and divided into 5 modules: initialization, video, detection, tracking, and counting. Initialization. The first one is the initialization, and this module starts the cameras and prepares them to be used by the next module. The second module is the video one. It receives the images captured by the cameras and converts them to a 640 by 640 resolution that is compatible with the YOLO V5 detector. The third is the detection one, and it takes care of recognition, fetches the converted box frames, and using YOLO V5 to process these frames, returns all the bounding boxes with the respective product classifications. The fourth is the tracking one. This module filters the detectors that are outside the region of interest of the conveyor belt and set unique IDs to valid detected products. The last model, the counting one, detects when a product passed through the counting line and, if true, executes the counting. These two last models were the most complex parts of the solution and went through several iterations. We built the tracking model using an open source technology called a simple online and real-time tracking algorithm for 2D multiple object tracking in video sequences. This algorithm uses centroids and Euclidean distance, but also does the prediction of the position of an object in the future. And that was the fundamental to get a smooth tracking of the product, even in a bad environment situation. For the counting, we created virtual lines to trigger events for us. Here is an example of the tracking and counting process. The video is lowered down by 0.5 times. The horizontal one filters the products that are shown in the frame, but are out of the region of interest. To make this works, we use the bottom coordinates to make sure that the only products counted are the ones touching the conveyor belt. As for the vertical ones, one is responsible for marking a product ready to count, and the second to execute the counting, represented by the frame with the orange bounding box. As for the data set, due to the variability and availability of the products produced by Semalo, we built the dataset iteratively. In the beginning, only a few as examples of each product were included. As the solution improved, we took new images to try to improve the low accuracy. One of the challenges we faced was the change in brightness over the course of that day in the industry. To solve this problem, we had to take images throughout the production cycle. In this way, we are able to improve the generalization of our model. However, during the tests in production, it became clear that it would not be possible to eliminate all the variation that could occur in a product and affect its classification. Therefore, to improve generalization, we took and annotated the product images in a laboratory environment. The left one represents an image of the laboratory capture and the right one in the production environment. As explained, when training the model, we divided the products in the same groups used in the Semalo industry. This subdivision improved the accuracy, and even we could use a more lightweight version of YOLO v5, improving performance. In order to configure the parameterization of the network, a test were defined. The number of epochs affects accuracy and had to be defined to reduce training time while maintaining the accuracy of the network. With 200 epochs and the amount of data collected, the training would take 8 days. For the epoch test, we assumed that the data set consisted of images taken in different environments. Then we randomly ordered it and used 80% of them for training and 20% for testing. We tested the following number of epochs: 10, 25, 50, 100, and 200. Results showed that 50 is the ideal number of epochs, balancing the best of accuracy and training time. The result of the trained models showed a mean average precision of almost 99%. Finally, to validate our solution, we recorded videos of the neural network counting products at different moments and did the manual counting so we could compare the results. Accuracy rate was almost 100%. The boxes, throughout the development of the solution, always showed better results in comparison of the BIOS because of the characteristics of the boxes, showed minor variations than the BIOS. We have presented an approach to recognition, classification, and counting using an object detection deep learning technique. The results show that our solution achieves great accuracy in product counting and classification. This proves the feasibility of our solution in a real production environment. So we foresee the solution evolution in order to make it possible to count products with a low power system, without the need for a dedicated server to process and count. As another future work, we envisage the use of the current solution in other industries, with characteristics different from those exposed by this paper. So thank you. Did you have any questions?
Okay, thank you, Rafael. Very interesting work. Are there the questions? So I have a question for you. Have you tried to using the YOLO 6 in your work or not?
YOLO 6?
Yes.
No. We only used the YOLO V4, but YOLO V5 showed better,
Okay.
more easily to use.
So you said the YOLO 4, the previous version.
Yes.
Okay, and what are the difference, in your opinion, from the two different approach? What are the better algorithm, in your opinion?
For the YOLO,
Yes.
it's because YOLO V5 uses PyTorch as the framework, so we could use it more easily the program in Python than the YOLO V4 that use C as the main language.
Okay, thank you very much. It's a very interesting research. And now are present the second speaker, ACG based habit classification from admitted detection and artificial neural working. Eduardo Cepeda, Nadia Sanchez, Diego Pelufo, Joan Gonzalez, and Diego Galarraga.
Yep. Hi, good afternoon.
Okay.
Can you hear me well?
You're welcome. If you want, we can share your screen.
Okay.
You have 15 minutes.
Do you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. Good afternoon, all. This time I will present my research entitled ECG based habit classification for arrhythmia detection using artificial neural network. The ear is a muscular organ that pumps blood through the arteries. That electrocardiogram ECG, as shown in the figure, is a graphic representation of the electrical activity of the ear as a function of time. So it visually records the ear movements. In the last decade, the incidence of cardiovascular disease has grown exponentially, becoming a number one cause of human morbidity worldwide. Previous articles claim that this represents 30% of global deaths. So, cardiac arrhythmia is a specific cardiovascular disease characterized by electrical activity of the heart as a function of time. Although some arrhythmias are mild, and some can be fatal. Treatment costs of cardiovascular disease, includes medication, are high. In this context, this research offers the detection of this cardiovascular disease using machine learning techniques. For this purpose, a comparative investigation is developed between two classifications: multi-layer perceptron and artificial neural network, capable of recognize and classifies arrhythmias in a framework of optimize the robustness and variability and precision of the signal. Okay, the methodology proposed to achieve our objectives is shown in the following diagram. The diagram shows the steps to detect cardiac arrhythmias, which consist of the following steps. Acquisition, that is ECG data collection, processing, preprocessing, segmentation, characterization, classification, and performance metrics. So, first of all, the signal is structured from the MIT-bit database that is freely accessible on the web. It is important to mention that the recommendation of previous article was used, and these arrhythmias were divided into a super classes, as can be seen in that table. Okay, for the signal preprocessing, a geometric normalization and overlay filtering were performed to reduce signal disturbance. That you can see in that figure. That is a signal unfiltered, and that is a filter SCG signal. Um, all of this, we use previous articles methodology, which was efficient for our investigation. For the segmentation of the bits, the segmentation of QRS waves was used due to its high reliability that presets previous articles. In this process, the ear peak is used as a reference point, and the signal is divided according to the following equations that you can see here. Phi represents the position of the ear peak of an IB bit, and RE is the vector that stores the distance between the ear peaks. Here, R is used as the central peak, that is, alpha and beta have a value of 0.1. As if in the figure, this is how the wave is segmented with the most prominent bits. Okay. For signal classification, the open source machine learning library PyCar was used, from which the artificial neural networks were created to automatically extract possible relationship between various arrhythmias and regular bits. The first artificial neural network was built using the MLP classifier. So all hyperparameters were set the default, except for the following steps. Alpha was changed to 1 times 10 to the let's fifth, and hidden layer size, we put 10, 20, 10, and a max iteration of 500. And the second artificial neural network was built using a sequential dense, and all hyperparameters were set to default. In both cases, we use ReLU, that is the rectified learning unit activation function that minimizes the computational complexity of the model. So increase its statistical efficiency and achieves nonlinear capabilities. It was chosen for the mod layer. Compared to the other optimizers, Adam tends to speed up the network formation process. And to detail of the architecture of each model are shown in that table. In In that figure, we shows the classification of artificial neural networks, where you can see ECG signal, intervals, the dynamic features of characterization, and the artificial neural network classification with these higher layers and the upper layers. So, our method research an accuracy of up to 1990% to detect cardiovascular arrhythmias, applying an easy automatical neural network. As can be seen in the table, recall, precision, F score, and error have a good and promising results for the signal classification. And a comparison of our methodology with previous article was carried out, which used a different classifier, and our research have a 99% accuracy, and it is competence with those the literature. The percent is adequate. However, the computational cost and the strength of this research make this an outstanding results compared to the others. Finally, the comparison of our then Keras methodology based on artificial neural networks is compared with a scikit-learn MLP classification, and with generally promising results because despite being a more complicated neural networks than the one suggests, it can be seen in the table. Despite adopting a non-complex and cheap computational cost strategy, our method is competitive and produce better results. To conclude, this study proposed the construction of a machine learning technique capable of identifying cardiac arrhythmia. A comparison of the model described in this work with some of the approaches currently available in the literature reveals a good results. This model correctly diagnoses various types of cardiac arrhythmias using artificial neural network classification with an accuracy of up to 90%. Furthermore, this strategy requires few computational cuts. The way this study was carried out allows comparison between multi-layer perception classification and the suggested approach, which yield promising results with a comparable accuracy to the conventional methods. As a future work, both new characterization, include web transform and classification approach will be explored. In addition, techniques to add interpretability and reduce computational costs will be incorporated in the future version of this software. And that is all. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your presentation. Any question? Okay.
Thanks, Eduardo, for the presentation. I want to know if the kind of algorithm you use to train the neural network.
Yep. Let me see the table. In that table, you can appreciate that we use ReLU. That is an activation, the best activation in this method, because with other activations, their performance could be low, and for that reason, we use ReLU. And the other hyperparameters that I mentioned before is changes to carry out the performance. For other reasons, in the paper is mentioned that some hyperparameters are changed. to achieve the goal.
And what's the software do you use to perform the computation?
Yeah, the software we use was Python, and already we are modifying the code to the future work that I mentioned before. With the library maker.
In Python, you say.
Yep.
Okay. Thanks, Eduardo.
Thank you too.
Okay. There are any questions? Oh, okay. Thank you for your presentation. Very interesting work. Now we can start for the last one. Tiago Trotta, Leonardo Roca. Sorry for my slang. Telma Andrade,
It's
Marcelo V. Manales, and Diego Diaz.
Yeah, thank you. I'm gonna present my screen. Just 1 second. Oh, sorry. Good afternoon, everyone. Can you all see me and hear me?
You can. We can see your presentation.
Okay. Well, my name is Tiago Trota. I'm a master's degree student at Federal University of São João del Rei, and I'm going to present Celibras, a gesture recognition app for the Brazilian Sign Language. Sign languages are visual representations based on hand gestures and facial and body expressions, and they are distinct from conventional languages because they are not auditory and do not require vocal expression. As they develop within deaf communities, they are considered natural languages. But sign languages are more complex than just sets of hand gestures. They have their own grammar, syntax, and semantics, and thus recognizing their gestures can be classified as a challenge to be beaten by machine learning techniques. There is no universal sign language. In Brazil, there is the Brazilian Sign Language, or Libras, which is recognized as a legal and genuine means of communication in Brazil since 2002 and has favored the development of deaf and hard of hearing children from an early age. Among the many fields of study around sign languages, sign language recognition, or SLR, aims to develop computational approaches to automatically identify signs and correctly understand their meaning. Many SLR approaches treat the problem simply as gesture recognition, but sign languages are far more complex than just that. So classifying only the alphabet of a sign language would be a more manageable approach, since these gestures are usually much simpler and less context sensitive. One of the techniques frequently used in SLR is machine learning, which is a subfield of artificial intelligence that aims to automate the building of analytical models and allow machines to adapt to various scenarios independently. Machine learning has been applied to solve various problems of our daily lives, such as image interpretation, voice command recognition, and disease identification. Thus, we propose Celibras, a mobile and desktop application that aims to capture hand gestures and classify them as letters of the Libras alphabet using a support vector machine, or SVM. To allow Celibras to classify the gestures, we had to construct a dataset of previously recorded examples for each of the letters. Among the several approaches currently applied to SLR, we can highlight sensor-based approaches and computer vision-based approaches. In sensor-based approaches, as the name suggests, there are sensors attached to the subject's body to record their body movements. In the case of sign languages, most gestures are concentrated on the upper limbs, especially in the hands. The advances in virtual reality have enabled the proposal of several unconventional interaction devices, such as gloves, for example, the one shown in figure 1, which is a data glove designed for recognizing the Malaysian Sign Language. It includes 10 tilt sensors to capture finger flexion and an accelerometer for recognizing hand motions. Aside from these sensors that were applied in this glove, other kinds of sensors have also been employed, such as gyroscopes and compasses. One of the great benefits of this approach is the accuracy achieved. Since the sensors are attached to the user's body, they do not suffer from occlusion issues, something very common in solutions that employ image capture, which on the other hand utilize computer vision. Computer vision-based approaches are techniques that allow body tracking without any device or sensor attached to the user's body. They enable mobility and naturality in movement execution and usually utilize RGB cameras, infrared sensors, or both of them, such is the case for Microsoft's Kinect. But on the other hand, we have Google's MediaPipe, shown in figure 3, that allows body tracking with only RGB cameras. In fact, MediaPipe is a technology that we used to construct our training dataset. On the other hand of the spectrum, there is the Leap Motion Controller, shown in figure 4, that uses only infrared sensors and is designed specifically for hand tracking, which would also be pretty good for recording the Libras alphabet. Gloves are predominantly sensor-based, but some approaches have explored the use of computer vision, such as colored gloves, as the one shown in figure 5, or colored markers positioned on the wrist or fingertips. Our dataset is a collection of several gesture examples for each of the letters in the Libras alphabet that can be recorded by any kind of body tracking technique. But the examples we used were taken from video files recorded with regular RGB cameras. Some videos were recorded by members of the research team and others were downloaded from YouTube. All the videos were processed using MediaPipe in order to extract the hand's joints, as shown in figure 6. The gestures received labels to be used as classes, and the labels were automatically assigned based on the video's name. For example, a video named Libras alphabet letter A would be labeled Libras A. The gesture's coordinates were converted into rotations, and these rotations and the labels were written into JSON files and inserted into the Rebase database using the Unity Rebase API. Rebase is a database dedicated to storing body movements from the neuromotor rehabilitation context. It stores the rotations of the body's joints over time, which take much less storage than video files and preserve the anonymity of the data since no image of the subjects are stored. The movements can be recorded by any kind of body tracking device using sensor-based approaches or computer vision-based approaches. And even though Rebase was not designed for hand gestures, its data format is flexible enough to be adapted to other use cases. Figure 7 shows how we map the hand joints from MediaPipe to the body joints from Rebase. Some of the joints were ignored as they weren't needed for this application. After the dataset had been created, the gestures had to go through a pre-processing stage before they could be used to train the dataset. To train the SVM, sorry. First, the rotations were normalized between 0 and 360 degrees to eliminate any negative values that could have appeared in the coordinate to rotation conversion. Then, the gestures had their durations normalized to 30 frames because that was the duration of the shortest example we had. Every gesture over 30 frames had to have frames removed from their duration in regular intervals. The gestures were then converted into an array containing all the rotations linearly. After the dataset was constructed and the gestures were pre-processed, we used them to train multiple SVMs to classify new gestures. The SVMs were constructed in Python using the scikit-learn library, and we chose the radial basis function, or RBF, as the kernel function. All of the SVM's parameters were left on their default values. For this application, each of the 27 letters of the Libras alphabet represent a class. Finally, we developed an application to send new gestures to an SVM and have them classified, the C-Libras application, which was developed for PC and Android smartphones and allows gesture classification in real time. It follows the client-server architecture in which the clients communicate with the server via web sockets, as figure 6 shows. I'm sorry, figure 8. The C-Libras client was developed in Unity and uses the MediaPipe Unity plugin to process the gestures and extract the hands joints. It follows a simple workflow shown in figure 9. Once every frame, the application extracts the hands joints, then calculates the joints rotations and stores them in an array, effectively translating the data to the same format used by the SVM. During this process, the rotations are also normalized. The array is then stored in a buffer, and the process is repeated for the next frame until the buffer is filled with 30 arrays. The application then sends the array to the server via WebSocket, clears the buffer, and immediately restarts filling it while waiting for the classification. When the client receives a response from the server, it displays the corresponding letter of the alphabet. Figure 10 shows the C-Libras client main screen, and figure 11 shows a settings menu. The C-Libras, I'm sorry, there's a mistake in the presentation. It's supposed to say the C-Libras server. This is the C-Libras server, which was developed in Python using the Django web framework. It also has a simple workflow shown in figure 12. On startup, the server loads an SVM model from a file and begins listening for connections. Once a WebSocket connection is established, the server waits for a message containing the 30 frames for classification. And when it receives the frames, the server only has to submit them to the SVM since the client has already done all the pre-processing. Lastly, the results are sent back to the client via the WebSocket, and the server waits for the following message. To measure the accuracy of our models, we performed 3 experiments. The first experiment, we trained multiple SVMs using 7 examples per letter, which we call the size of the model, and varying the letters. In the second experiment, we trained multiple models using the letters A, B, and C, and varying the size of the model. And the third experiment was the same as the second, but using the letters A, E, and S. To measure a model's accuracy, we calculated the accuracy for all letters and divided it by the number of letters. The accuracy for each letter was calculated by executing the gesture 10 times and dividing by 10 the number of times the model classified it correctly. Usually machine learning datasets will have thousands upon thousands of examples, but our dataset is still very small. We didn't have enough time to record thousands of examples for each letter. We only have 339 examples of gestures. Table 1 shows the results for experiment number 1. We can see that the model trained to recognize the full alphabet obtained an extremely low accuracy. That's because there were just too few examples for each gesture and too many classes, which resulted in a model of poor quality. We also noted that the size of the model affects the accuracy as well, as evidenced by the overall tendency of smaller models to have a higher accuracy score. Furthermore, the selection of the letters also influenced the accuracy score. That's because with so few examples for each letter, there is a very high chance that the model will confuse letters with similar signs. For example, figure 13 shows some comparisons of letters that have similar signs. Table 2 shows the results for experiment number 2. we can see that the total accuracy for the models trained to recognize only the letters A, B, and C is much higher than the accuracy of the more general models used in experiment 1. That's because it's easier for the model to distinguish between fewer classes, as evidenced by experiment 1. Figure 14 shows the comparisons between the letters A, B, and C. You can see that they are not very similar. They are distinct enough from each other that it allowed the model to accurately distinguish between them with as few as 7 examples per letter. Finally, the results of experiment 3 presented in table 3 established the importance of the letter set. This experiment used an SVM of the same size as the one used in experiment 3, as the one used in experiment 2, but the letters used are much more similar to each other. As a result, the total accuracies of the models in experiment 3 were much lower than those of the ones used in experiment 2, even though they had the same size. It's also important to note that in both experiments 2 and 3, while an increase in the model's size translated to an increase in total accuracy, it did not translate directly to an increase in accuracy for all letters, because the size was not yet large enough to completely eliminate confusion between letters. Figure 15 shows a comparison of the letters A, E, and S using experiment 3, and you can see that they are indeed very similar. Well, in conclusion, we presented Celibras, a mobile and desktop application capable of capturing hand gestures and classifying them as letters of the Libras alphabet in real time. It follows a server-client architecture in which the client captures the gestures and the server classifies the gestures using an SVM. The training dataset was stored in the Rebase database and is made up of videos recorded with regular RGB cameras and processed with MediaPipe to extract the rotations of the hand's joints. We tested many different SVMs with different sets of letters and different numbers of examples per letter, and concluded that the number of examples per letter and the size of the letter set affects the model's accuracy, as well as the choice of letters in the set. In the future, we plan to expand our training dataset, recording more examples for each letter of the Libras alphabet and recording gestures executed by different voluntaries. We also plan to fine-tune our SVMs, experimenting with different kernel functions and parameters, so we can finally be able to train an SVM to classify the entire Libras alphabet accurately. We also plan to validate our application in real scenarios using real users and using members of the deaf community. Finally, we also plan to implement a reverse approach, allowing the application to receive text input and display the corresponding alphabet signs. Thank you all very much. I hope you enjoyed the presentation. I'll now be open for questions.
Thank you for your presentation. Very interesting work. Are there the questions?
Thank you.
No. I have a question for you. You
Yes.
used a SVM classifier. Did you try
Yes.
to use another type of algorithm of classification, like random forest or maximum likelihood, in order
Yeah,
to
we
compare the results of SVM with other and test the results of your work?
Well, no, unfortunately, we didn't compare the results of the SVM with other machine learning techniques. We thought about using neural networks, but upon further research, we noticed that most not most, but many machine learning approaches to sign language classification utilize support vector machines, so we ended up going with that. But it would be interesting to see how these methods compare to each other.
Okay, thank you. So yours is the last presentation. our session is closed, it's finished. Thank you very much at all for your works, very interesting research. And so I hope you to see again for ICSA next year, and have a good day, and bye-bye.
Thank you very much. Congratulations to everyone.